Uncle Einar by Ray Bradbury. It will only take a minute, said Uncle Einar's sweet wife. I refuse, he said, and that takes but a second. I've worked all morning, she said, holding to her slender back. And you won't help? It's drumming for a rain. Let it rain, he cried morosely. I'll not be pierced by lightning just to air your clothes. But you're so quick at it. Again, I refuse. His vast tarpaulin wings hung nervously behind his indignant back. She gave him a slender rope on which were tied 4 dozen fresh-washed clothes. He turned it in his fingers with distaste. So it's come to this, he muttered bitterly. To this, to this, to this. He almost wept angry and acid tears. Don't cry, you'll wet them down again, she said. Jump up now, run them about. Run them about. His voice was hollow, deep, and terribly wounded. I say, let it thunder, let it pour. If it was a nice sunny day, I wouldn't ask, she said reasonably. All my washing gone for nothing if you don't. They'll hang about the house. That did it. Above all, he hated clothes flagged and festooned so a man had to creep under on the way across a room. He jumped up. His vast green wings boomed. Only so far as the pasture fence. Whirl, up he jumped. His wings chewed and loved the cool air. Before you'd say Uncle Einar has green wings, he sailed low across his farmland, trailing the clothes in a vast fluttering loop through the pounding concussion and backwash of his wings. Catch! Back from the trip, he sailed the clothes, dry as popcorn, down on a series of clean blankets she'd spread for their landing. Thank you, she cried. Gah! He shouted, and flew off under the apple tree to brood. Uncle Einar's beautiful silk-like wings hung like sea-green sails behind him, and whirred and whispered from his shoulders when he sneezed or turned swiftly. He was one of the few family whose talent was visible. All his dark cousins and nephews and brothers hid in small towns across the world, did unseen mental things or things with witch fingers and white teeth, or blew down the sky like fire leaves, or loped in forest like moon-silvered wolves. They lived comparatively safe from normal humans, not so a man with great green wings. Not that he hated his wings, far from it. In his youth, he'd always flown nights because nights were rare times for winged men. Daylight held dangers, always had, always would. But nights, nights, he had sailed over islands of cloud and seas of summer sky, with no danger to himself. It had been a rich, full soaring and exhilaration. But now he could not fly at night. On his way home to some high mountain pass in Europe after a homecoming among family members in Melontown, Illinois, some years ago, he had drunk too much rich crimson wine. I'll be all right, he had told himself, vaguely, as he beat his long way under the morning stars, over the moon-dreaming country hills beyond Melontown. And then crack, out of the sky, a high-tension tower, like a netted duck, a great sizzle, his face blown black by a blue sparkler of wire. He fended off the electricity with a terrific back-jumping percussion of his wings, and fell. His hitting the moonlit meadow under the tower made a noise like a large telephone book dropped from the sky. Early the next morning, his dew-sodden wings shaking violently, he stood up. It was still dark. There was a faint bandage of dawn stretched across the east. Soon the bandage would stain and all flight would be restricted. There was nothing to do but take refuge in the forest and wait out the day in the deepest thicket until another night gave his wings a hidden motion in the sky. In this fashion he met his wife. During the day, which was warm for November 1st in Illinois country, pretty young Brunilla Wexley was out to utter a lost cow, for she carried a silver pail in one hand as she sidled through thickets and pleaded cleverly to the unseen cow to please return home or burst her gut with unplucked milk. The fact that the cow would have most certainly come home when her teat really needed pulling did not concern Brunilla Wexley. It was a sweet excuse for forest journeying, thistle blowing, and flower chewing, all of which Brunilla was doing as she stumbled upon Uncle Einar. Asleep near a bush, he seemed a man under a green shelter. "Oh," said Brunilla, with a fever. "A man in a camp tent." Uncle Einar awoke. The camp tent spread like large green fans behind him. "Oh," said Brunilla, the cow searcher. "A man with wings." That was how she took it. She was startled, yes, but she had never been hurt in her life, so she wasn't afraid of anyone. And it was a fancy thing to see a winged man, and she was proud to meet him. She began to talk. In an hour they were old friends, and in 2 hours she'd quite forgotten his wings were there. And he somehow confessed how he happened to be in this wood. "Yes, I noticed you look banged about," she said. "That right wing looks very bad. You best let me take you home and fix it. You won't be able to fly all the way to Europe on it anyway. And who wants to live in Europe these days?" He thanked her, but he didn't quite see how he could accept. "But I live alone," she said, "for, as you see, I'm quite ugly." He insisted she was not. "How kind of you," she said, "but I am. There's no fooling myself. My folks are dead. I've a farm, a big one, and all to myself, quite far from Melontown, and I'm in need of talking company." But wasn't she afraid of him, he asked. "Proud and jealous would be more near it," she said. "May I?" As she stroked his large green membrane veils with careful envy, he shuddered at the touch and put his tongue between his teeth. So there was nothing for it but that he come to her house for medicaments and ointments, and my, what a burn across his face, beneath his eyes. "Lucky you weren't blinded," she said. "How'd it happen?" "Well," he said, they were here at her farm, hardly noticing they'd walked a mile, looking at each other. A day passed, and another, and he thanked her at her door, and he said he must be going. He much appreciated the ointment, the care, the lodging. It was twilight, and between now, 6 o'clock, and 5 in the morning, he must cross an ocean and a continent. "Thank you. Goodbye," he said, and started to fly off in the dusk and crashed right into a maple tree. "Oh!" she screamed, and ran to his unconscious body. When he waked the next day, he knew he'd fly no more in the dark ever again.